Hi guys, I took a shower and got dressed for you today. Um, I'm mostly kidding because part of my coping mechanism is I get up every day, I make my bed, I brush my teeth, I wash my face, and even if I'm just wearing comfy clothes or exercise clothes, I am actually getting up every day and trying to implement some sort of a routine just to communicate to life that I'm still living it. But today I wanted to, as I said, I was going to start this conversation about fear and stress, and that's the environment that we are all sort of existing in right now. And I think that rather than us discussing all of the things that are feeding that, maybe we could talk a little bit about the state that we're all existing in and how it is going to impact us, how it impacts us right now and how it impacts us long term. I don't think that living in fear is a new phenomenon. Fear has been our friend for a long time. Not a very good friend, but definitely a familiar companion. We as a culture, I think, are pretty driven by fear energetically in a lot of different ways. Fear is a natural response to a threatening environment or a threat in our environment. There were times throughout history where fear was what kept us alive when we were being chased or pursued by a predator, when we were at war with another people, if we were, trying to navigate in terrain that was unstable or unsafe. Fear was there to cause us to be cautious, to move carefully, to be on high alert so as to survive the situation. Unfortunately, it's now become how we deal with most of our day. We have so much information and far too much time, especially right now. And all of that information is going into our minds and sort of working us up into a fear frenzy. We are collectively in a frenzy of fear. And in a time when supporting our immune system and our health is more vital than it ever has been, collectively, we're harming our health in this way that I think many of us are not fully aware of. Fear, I think of fear as being sort of insidious. It is, it wears a lot of disguises. We give it a lot of different names and identities. We justify a lot of our choices that we might call being preemptive or being deliberate, or making sure that we're making wise choices. I think sometimes we give it the disguise of control. Oh, I just like to be in control of things. And that's a whole other conversation that we could have. But fear is, I think, the gift that we are being given in this really weird time is that we can really take a look at this thing called fear and its impact, the stress impact that it has on our lives, and how that affects us on such a broad scale. We could go so many places with this conversation, and I think it would be a much more productive use of our energy while we're all here sitting at home to examine our relationship with fear, and in that, examine our relationship with our mind and our emotional responses, and figure out how to do that in a healthier, more conscious way, so that when, hopefully, we are able to return to some sort of normalcy, fear does not have to continue to dictate the way that we live our lives and the way that we make choices. This is just the beginning of a conversation. I have pages of notes of places I want to go with this. We could talk about ways to sort of sit within the energy of fear. The idea that resisting it, running from it, medicating it, and trying to be somewhere else is actually counterproductive. We could learn to listen to fear. We could learn to sort of figure out what it is that fear wants us to pay attention to. We could learn to be brave. We could learn what it is that is beneath the fear, because fear usually has all of these different layers to it. For instance, fear right now around financial things. I feel like that's a fairly easy conversation to have, not getting into talking about the virus or any elements of even health. But fear around loss of income, fear around the inability to be able to pay your rent or your mortgage or your utilities or buy food, and provide for your family, keep a roof over your head. That is a very practical, real, sort of standard survival fear, and it's a natural one to have. You could follow that fear down all potential probable outcomes, prolonged not being able to pay for your housing situation, not being able to buy food. And we do that mentally, right? The moment that we have the first introduction of the potential for catastrophe down the road, catastrophe is here right in front of our eyes. And suddenly that's all we can see. It may just be the low amount that's in our bank account right now, and not knowing where the next check is going to come in or when it's going to be able to, or what we're going to be able to afford. But rather than being in this present moment of what is happening, we've already taken multiple steps into the future, the potential future reality, and we've created a current reality based on that future reality. That is one of the sort of ways that fear drives us. And the brain really doesn't distinguish between an imagined, pictured reality that we are having an emotional response to and our actual physical reality, which is still steps back before that catastrophe. And then we live in real time based on a future projected reality. While this makes a lot of sense and seems justifiable in this current environment, the conversation I'm trying to have is that this is a reality that we all live in most of the time, and have long before we were dealing with this stay-at-home order and the quarantine because of this virus situation. And so I think we're being given an invitation, and I don't say that in a flippant way, because I personally am in that situation of not having been able to earn a normal income, and also not knowing when I'll be able to return to normal routines and being able to work as somebody who is self-employed, an independent contractor. There are a lot of other ways that we could talk about all of those different components, because we're all dealing with that in different ways. But rather than me projecting a potential fearful future reality, which I personally am very prone towards doing, I'm a planner. I'm a researcher and a reader and a planner, and want to know everything, and I want to be prepared. And so my struggle is always to sort of stay present with what I have in my current reality and deal with that. But I don't think I'm alone in that. I think that is something that we're all dealing with right now. And it feels like a much more productive use of our time, rather than consuming all of the things that could justifiably feed the fear. That we could take that fear and allow it to be there, but sort of but in a reasonable, rational way, and say, yes, fear, I see you, I see what you were trying to prepare me for. But right now, this is where I am. These are the things I have. And in this moment, I am okay. And then eventually, hopefully, we get past that point of just being okay in that moment. And just like we can picture potential fearful realities, I'd like to mention percentages here as well, because typically when we're given the potential for a fearful reality, there is a much larger percentage that things are going to be okay. I know it works that way in childbirth, which is a field that I work in, preparing people to help them through their birth processes and become parents. They are often fed a lot of scary statistics about the things that could go wrong. But if you look at the numbers, usually the percentages of things potentially going wrong are low, like 2 to 3 or 4 or 5%, which means the larger piece of the pie, the 95 to 97 or 98% chance that things are going to be fine, it gets completely pushed to the side because we have to prepare for this really tiny chance that things might not go right. I believe the percentages with this virus are similar, and I don't say that to make light of the way that people have been affected by it, because I personally have, as a family, we have been affected by it as well. But largely, the larger percentage speaks to the fact that most of us are going to be okay. And rather than all of us wondering if we are going to fall in that smaller percentage, I would invite us to maybe spend a little more time, because the larger percentage, it's only fair that we give it its due, that everything is going to be okay, and that we're going to be okay, and that we can function within a space where we can at least reduce the pressure and the stress that fear is creating for us. This is a conversation that I'm trying to have. I am not coming out to say that I have all the concrete answers or all the best approaches. I think what works for each of us is going to be uniquely different. I would be happy to share some of the things that I do day to day, some of the ways that I work to sort of manage this monkey mind, which I do. And thankfully, I have a lot of practices that I have put into place leading up to this point, but they're being tested every day. I definitely struggle many mornings with my perspective, but because I care so much about maintaining the wholeness of my mind and my spirit right now, I'm doing what I can to have a healthy relationship with fear and not allow it to debilitate my body and how my body works. I would like to talk a little bit in future videos about the way that fear affects us physiologically. We could talk a little bit about the autonomic nervous system. We could talk about epigenetics and the impact of the environment on our genetic sort of expression or the cells of our body, because that's what we are. We are just made up of many, many, many cells. And in essence, this human form is just the environment or the petri dish for all of those cells. And in that way, we have a big responsibility for caring for that environment. This is just an introduction to that conversation. Feel free to let me know if continuing it appeals to you.